So professionally, I do research and science, and I thought the other day I should do an analysis of my collection to inform in the future what kinds of trees I should maybe look to get that I value the most, as well as what trees I should steer clear of because I'll end up just getting rid of them anyways in the future. Um, so that's what I did. It was a lot of fun, and there were some surprises, which was especially fun. One big question I had was, is there a relationship between how much I paid for a tree and how much I value the tree now? I thought there'd be a slight positive relationship, but I didn't think it'd be very strong. I also just wanted to look at, just categorically, what kind of trees do I like the most? And then what kind of trees in my collection am I more ambivalent about and don't care as much about? Um, so yeah, it was a lot of fun, and I'm gonna present it kind of like I would a scientific talk, which I do for work. I have some slides with some figures, um, and yeah, I'll get into it. So I have what I call a bonsai inventory, and it's basically just a spreadsheet that lists my trees. I developed it because as I started to get more and more trees, I noticed, I was forgetting, when did I get that tree and what was the variety on that, and I just wanted to keep track of all that. And since then, I've added um, some attributes to the table. One that I found especially useful for managing my trees is the last time I repotted it. I list the time I did that so that I can keep track of when I need to next repot it. So I took that inventory and for this analysis, and I added some more tree attributes. One field I didn't have was the price I paid. Actually, I think I maybe didn't want to know, how much I paid for all my trees. Maybe I just wanted to be in ignorance about that. So I added the price I paid, and I had a pretty good idea. Um, Not an exact idea, but I remembered pretty well how much I paid for each one of them. I do know that the most I've ever paid for a tree is $100. And that's one of my first trees, my maple, Macaulay Yatsubusa. So I entered the price I paid, and then I signed it this my value score. And again, since the most I've ever paid for a tree I knew was at $100, so that was my range for how much I paid. I decided to give my value a score of 0 through 100, with the ranking that 0 means I really, if the tree dies, I just don't really care. I don't value that too much. 50 means, yeah, I kind of like this tree, um, but if it dies, it dies. And then 100 being, if this tree dies, I will be sad. I will mourn when this tree dies. So 100 means, I really value this tree. So I went through, and actually wasn't too hard for me to assign each one of my trees that value score. Took me maybe a few minutes, and I just quickly, kind of my first impression is, how much do I value this tree? Do I really love this tree, or do I just feel ambivalent about it and give it a 50? So, on to my results of my analysis. So, I actually didn't have an exact number until I did this. I have 51 bonsai. And I shouldn't say they're not all bonsai, they're pre-bonsai too. Honestly, most of them are probably pre-bonsai. But the total number of trees that I kind of care and have um, some skin in the game thus far, because I've spent some time on them, is 51. And I'm sure there's a few more little things I've stuck in the ground that I'm kind of watching, but those are the ones that I really care about. So 32 of those are in pots, and 19 I actually have in the ground. So that also didn't surprise me too much. I was curious, I'm really into dwarf varieties, and so I want to know, how many of my trees are dwarf varieties, how are non-dwarf, and it's a 50-50 split there. 26 are dwarf, 25 are non-dwarf. 10 are dwarf conifers, which I'm pretty into, and only 8 are maples. Um, and the total I spent on my trees, I'm not going to reveal in case my wife watches this. I don't want to reveal that number. Let's just say it is more than I estimated. It's not No, about twice as much, but maybe 30% more than I estimate I've spent on trees. So that kind of surprised me. Plus, these are the trees that I still have with me in 2024. This is May 2024. I'm doing this analysis. There's trees I've killed that I've paid money for that have died, or that I've just planted on the ground. So I paid even more than the price that I found in this analysis. Um, this is something that I hadn't thought initially to look at, but then looking at the data, I thought, well, I should see, what's the distribution of when I've acquired these trees. So you can see there in 2012 is about when I got my first tree, and I still have one that I got in 2015 or 16 with me. And there were some more back in that time period that I got, but they have since moved on, aka they've died. so then my interest in bonsai really ramped up in 2019, 2020. That's when I started getting into it again. And I was super surprised to see in 2022, I acquired 23 trees that I still have with me. That is a lot. That's like a tree a week during the growing season, half the year. So I was just shocked at how many I had acquired. And then it tapers off, though. I'm glad to see that red line that I drew kind of shows. All right, good. I'm kind of getting my buying habits under control, hopefully. so, um, and my goal here in 2024, I don't want to buy anything else in 2024, but I do anticipate in the future. I think I'll keep acquiring trees, but at a much slower pace. Like I think I'm 7 here for 2024, which shocked me actually. I'm like, I bought 7 trees this year. What are they? so I plan to continue that trend in the future. But I think a lot of bonsai folks like me, the amateurs, you probably have a similar curve to me, where you really ramp up quickly when you get excited about bonsai, like I was in 2022, and you just love buying things and get really excited about it, and then you start to be more discerning and say, do I really want this, shrub from the garden center that's $10? Like, is this really gonna become a good bonsai? Um, so you become more discerning about what you're gonna buy, and it tapers off. So here's the price that I paid for my trees, and there kind of are three. Um, it's a trimodal distribution, I'd say, and that really fits with my experience. Is like I have no problems buying a tree that's $20 or less. I think, what's $20? I have that money. What's $10? And so quite a few of my trees and my material are in that lower range of $25 or less. Then there's like the mid range, where I think a little bit more about those. If I'm gonna pay $50 for something, I'm gonna think it through, and but I don't do it as much, just to be financially responsible. And then there's the few trees at the top where I paid a decent sum of money. And these trees I've really, thought more about when I buy them. I haven't just bought them on a whim. Those are trees I, think maybe I find it in a local nursery and I think about it for a week or two and think, yeah, I'm gonna go for it. I'm gonna get that tree. I think I'd really like that. And so here is the biggest figure that I was interested in producing when I started this analysis, and that was the price I paid for the tree versus how much I value it now. And I knew there'd be a positive relationship, as is shown here, that as the tree increased in price, the more I value it. But it was actually a little bit stronger of a relationship than I anticipated. Um, that yeah, the more I pay, the more I'm going to value the tree, which some of you might think, well, duh, that's obvious. But to me, it wasn't, because I know I have some trees. Um, for instance, this is it's a pretty strong relationship, but it's not super strong. I do have some trees I haven't paid much for, but I really value. One of those trees that I gave a value of 100 to, it's the highest. I paid, a little over $40 for it. Um, and there's even some trees, that I paid less than $20 for, but I gave it a value of 80. So I really value it quite a bit. So, so yeah, it surprised me a little bit. And kind of when I saw this, I thought, maybe, you know, maybe I should not um, buy as many trees that are worth less money. Maybe I should in the future, if I want to have more trees I value, I should spend a little bit more and maybe buy less of them. I knew, that I kind of have a liking for maples and dwarf conifers. So I wanted to see how those fell. And lo and behold, my three trees that I gave 100 to, that I value most, two of them are dwarf conifers, and one of them is my first maple that I paid $100 for. So yeah, those other 2 points um, that are dwarf conifers I give value of 100 to are my larch, my dwarf American larch, my blue sparkler, and then that other one that I only paid a little over $40 for is my Thuja ostentalis primo that I've really come to love and value. And I haven't even had that tree for too long. But those are my top three. And so I looked at, okay, how do I value maples versus not maples? And there's definitely a difference. I like maples, on average more than all my other trees that aren't maples. I also wanted to look at conifer versus dwarf conifer, and I thought I would um, value the dwarf conifers more than the non-conifers, but that's not really true. I think a lot of that has to do with like that previous box plot that I showed that maples are not dwarf conifers, so they really pulled that average up. Lastly, this also came up. I wanted to look at the source of my material. So I categorize them as coming from three sources. The first, that local on the left, that is, if I bought it locally at a local nursery, within 45 minutes of my house. Because the furthest nursery that I kind of like going to is about 45 minutes. I go there once or twice a year. I really love it. It has a lot of great varieties of dwarf conifer. Then the second is if I bought something online, and and then the third is just collecting. So I basically dug it up in my yard, or I collected it from the forest. So I wasn't too surprised. Things I buy online, those are things that I sought it out. It's something that I really wanted that I couldn't get locally. So it makes sense that I'd value that a little bit more. Whereas local purchases and then things I collect, I value about the same, or on average. But again, just to show most of the stuff that I have in my collection, this is showing the number of trees and where I've gotten them from for each source. Most of my trees I buy locally at local nurseries, over 30 trees of my 50 tree collection. Only a few have I bought online. It looks like 7, where I purchased it without really seeing it, because I want a certain variety. And then I have maybe 10 that I've collected from my yard or the forest. Yeah, that's my analysis, and I'll have some concluding remarks here. So there you have it. There was my analysis. And so to conclude, some of the major lessons learned and things I learned was, first I have 50 trees. I wasn't quite sure the exact number, but that's good to know. And a big surprise is I acquired a lot of trees in 2022. It really surprised me, like 3 times as many. And I paid more for my trees than I anticipated I paid over the years. And another surprise was the really strong relationship between the price I paid for a tree and how much I value the tree. I knew there'd be a positive relationship, but it was a much stronger positive relationship than I thought. So in the future, I think I might, rather than buying a lot of lower priced trees, perhaps I'll focus on just spending my energy or my money on just maybe a few trees that I pay a little bit more for. And lastly, one thing I kind of knew, anticipated, but it was fun to look at it with data, I guess you could say, was that I really like maples and value maples. So in the future too, I think I'm going to focus on, acquiring more maples, and probably especially dwarf varieties of Japanese maples. So that was a lot of fun.